Hello, it's Zoe, and welcome back to the Mischief Movement podcast, your weekly inspo for people looking for more hell yeah in their life. Consider this your one-way ticket out of midlife mediocrity towards fun and positive impact via playful disruption. Wouldn't you love to wake up and feel like a total badass? How about breaking some rules, throwing two fingers up to society and doing more of the things you love? I'm talking full-on freedom, adventure, and those meaningful connections I know you've been craving. Stop waiting for your amazing life to happen and go get it! I'll be picking the brains of some true game changers and mischief makers so I can share what I find and hopefully inspire you to shake things up, do more of what makes you feel alive, and boldly rebel against the ordinary. I've no idea what I'm doing, to be honest, but I've got a mission and I'm here to start a movement. It's going to be quite the adventure. Care to join me? Okay, here goes.
Vulnerability might still be viewed as a weakness in some circles, but not this one. Having worked on his own anxiety, Adam Slauson saw firsthand the power of people being able to talk about their emotions and set up a clothing brand to facilitate those conversations by redefining vulnerability and rebelling against staying the same. We discuss emotional training, building confidence, saying yes to life, and how the answer to anxiety and expressing ourselves isn't to feel less, but to lean into our emotions and feel them more. Above all, we'd both really like to help other humans, especially men, learn to open up and start to check in on each other. If you know someone affected by anxiety or who simply finds it hard to talk about their feelings, please consider sending them a link to this episode. It could be the first domino they need to spark a change. Okay, so today I'm joined by Adam Slauson from Plight Club. So it's so lovely to have you here with me.
Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm excited to get into the conversation.
So for anybody who hasn't met you before or hasn't heard of Plight Club, who are you and what's Plight Club all about?
Who am I? That's a big question. I'm an ex-anxiety, ex-overthinker, over-exerciser, really. And all those things we use to help me manage anxiety. And I realized that through the power of talking, learning to talk about my feelings, that life just transforms. So now I suppose I live much, much, much more from the heart. That's what I follow. And the energy that comes with that. So yes, I'm compassionate, loyal, loving human being, which I was before, but it was clouded by or covered in a veil of fear, let's say, on top of that. So I wasn't being truly myself. And that in essence is what Plight Club's about, in a way. Plight Club, the first rule of Plight Club is that you do talk about it. So that's where the play on words comes from. And Plight Club is all about helping people connect more deeply. Mm-hmm. And our mission is to redefine vulnerability, because vulnerability at this point, some people are starting to see that how it is the answer to a lot of things, but most people see it as a weakness because it feels negative, right? So the idea is that learning to feel that it's different. I think vulnerability is, I was about to say feel the fear, but it's different to fear vulnerability because you might not be fearful. It might be shame, or it might be guilt, or it might be something else that is underneath the thing of why you're wanting to be vulnerable. So it's like this real weird mixture of emotions that I believe that once you find the thing that makes you truly vulnerable and lean into it and do more of that, that's where your growth comes from. And so the brand is all about encouraging people to do that. So the clothings themselves are all conversation starters. So when someone says, I like your shirt, and you say, thank you, it's from Plight Club. It's all about helping people connect more deeply. Your conversation gets deeper more quickly, and you can be more, it breaks the ice into being vulnerable. And then the profits from the brand, when a person buys a Plight Club product, it helps fund someone else's coaching so that they can then learn and enable them to talk about how they feel.
I love that. In fact, when you talk about vulnerability, essentially it's putting yourself in a situation where it doesn't feel comfortable. But as you say, that is often where the growth is.
Yes, 100%. It happens in nature all the time. So, we're part of nature, and trees only grow apparently where the bark's the thinnest and where they're most vulnerable. And you see when snakes shed their skin or lobsters grow, they become vulnerable at a point in time. And so humans are the same. It's those moments. And if you can frame it that way and start to see vulnerability as growth, it's not something to fear in that context. So lots of famous philosophers have said, if you can see, if you can begin to see through fear, you can see, you can see through everything, kind of thing, which is, and the depth of that is dramatic. But that's what it's about. That the vulnerability, really seeing things as being able to pause and go, oh, I feel vulnerable. Should I go yes into it, or should I go no away from it? To bring it down to a very, very base level, it's like you've either got yes, I'm going to go into life and then kind of be more out there and be more joyous about life and be more like just mischievous as per your brand and that kind of thing, or you've got no, I'll stay the same and I'll stay safe and I'll do this. And it's when you do that, it's at times, obviously, that's what we need to do for literal safety reasons. But what you end up doing is the energy within us, it starts to stagnate. And so when you start to stagnate, this is where you're not growing. And this is what I believe where a lot of depression and things can come from. Not all, because I can't say that because I'm not a trained physician of any sort. But, I had it the other day, like with them, when we talked about my SAD syndrome that kicked in last week. And that's seasonal affective disorder, I think it stands for.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
But that was a moment where I was just like, oh, everything started to get on top of me, and I was just like, oh, all of a sudden my life was like everything was rubbish. Can we swear on this podcast?
Yes.
Yeah. I suppose it is a bit rebellious because I always end up swearing. So yeah, my life all of a sudden felt everything was shit, basically. Even though I love doing Plight Club, I love doing coaching, I love everything. Just became overwhelming, and I was just like, oh my god, life is the worst. And it wasn't because of anything had changed; it was because my chemicals in me had changed. And I then had my toolkit of, okay, I can feel this. Okay, well, I just need to take a breath, regroup. I had the cold showering works to bring you out of it. Grab vitamin D, do all these things, and push yourself in through the uncomfortable feeling, but at the same time, not try and solve the problem.
Yeah, in fact, reading through your Plight Club mission, and I know I've told you this, but you've got a statement that says rebelling against staying the same. And that just spoke to me. I was like, rebelling against staying the same. That's exactly what kind of lights me up. This idea that if you are gonna kind of allow yourself to stagnate, then you're at the same time you're saying no to so many other things that you haven't even considered yet. I get excited at the idea of a growth mindset, and when I meet people who are in that kind of stagnant place, I just want to reach out to them and say, if you can step into that zone of discomfort, if you could lean into that feeling, if you could say yes, there's so much more waiting for you beyond that. And the idea that you've brought that into a clothing brand and found a way to kind of facilitate those conversations, I think is just awesome. That is something that, I wanted so much to be able to transmit through my own brand, Mischief and Hide. I don't think it's quite at that stage yet, but obviously I'm sat here watching what you're doing and thinking, this is exactly the place I kind of want to be in.
I respect to your brand as well. Kudos. We've obviously connected because of our mutual brands, and I love. We're both wearing, as we said before, great frog rings, so we bond over the rock and roll element of it. And I found the rebel against staying the same came through because of how damn important it is in the stagnation thing. Because when you start to understand or emotions, and the most importantly the E in emotions, which is energy. So because the word emotion actually is two words, energy and motion together. So it's energy and motion. And we are energetic beings. Like everything in life is made of atoms, it's made of particles, it's made of energy. But in long and short, if you start to see yourself as something that energy moves through you, it flows. Like if you think of yourself as a wire, as an example, when you put energy through a wire, two things happen. One, it gets hot, and the other thing is gets slightly magnetic. And so when we start to see ourselves as energetic beings, and we start to saying yes to life, or yes to feeling vulnerable, yes, you get like the feeling of life starts to be generated in you. And the more you do that, the literally the hotter you get, as in the more you feel amazing. And the other thing that happens is you can feel when you're near someone that is saying yes to life, they are magnetic, right? Their energy is very much like, wow, there's something about them. I can't take my eyes off them or not. And it's not necessarily to do with because you find them physically attractive. It's just they have a thing about them. And it's that. And if you start to cultivate, you can cultivate that in everything. You know, we all the humans are beautifully unique. We're so wonderfully different. And yet we all are all the same in the context of we're all humans, you know. And so it's just finding the bit that's you, and leaning into that. That's where the vulnerability gives you that signal that this is what I'm meant to be doing. It's like a signal. I believe it's a signal of evolution.
That's really interesting. Have you found it hard to create a life and career around the things that you love, or has it kind of all slotted into place pretty seamlessly? I think I know the answer to that already, but
it's been really, really hard.
Yeah.
It's been really, really hard. It's been one of those situations where I call it emotional training. You know, you have a physical training, you have a PT.
Mm-hmm.
I call it ET, so emotional training. And it's learning to take the baby steps to then which enable you to take bigger steps. But it's almost like it's a constant way of being. And so initially it's really hard. Like it's like some of the vibrancy that you get from facing into your anxieties or facing into your fears, like the big ones that are there, they're the like the biggest boulders, and they're really obvious. But as you keep going along on the journey, the signals become more subtle, and it almost becomes harder because they're not as, it's easier to stay safe than it is to say yes, because it's not as an obvious direction. It's difficult, but it's also been the most rewarding at the same time. So it's like, it's been very much an up and down. Right. So you feel like that, oh, okay, oh my God, this is scary. So push through it. And then it's like, wow, that's amazing. But then you start to get more and more of that. And then you end up changing your identity to someone that's like, the other day, what was it? My partner asked her school their school asked me rather to do some talks on emotions. And so she said, do you want to do it? And my body went, no, but the word that came out, the word that came out of my mouth was yes. There was no gap in between. Whereas before I would have the panic feeling and go, oh, maybe give me time to think about it. Then I would stew on it for a bit. And then I would say, yeah, like in the past, I'd say no, but then I would say yes. But now it was very much completely different. It's like, okay, I feel that panic feeling. That means go to me, not stop.
It's awesome that you can recognize that, because working through your own emotions and learning the parts to listen to and the parts to not listen to as much, I think sometimes it can be hard to distinguish. Like you just said, you've got that instant body reaction, but the word that came out your mouth was actually yes. You know, it could have gone the other way.
It's learning to distinguish between what's fear, what's instinct, and what's fear, or in that context. And one way to look at it is if you think about the thing that whatever is in front of you, and you think about it, it's like, do I feel expansive on the other side of the thing, or do I feel restricted on the other, on the other side of the thing? Because if you feel expansive and yet you feel fear in your body, the fear in your body is nothing to do with the thing that's in front of you. And so you can, in those moments, it's learning just to take the step into it and ride the wave of the fear. And if you with the emotional training thing that I mentioned, my journey with that started in a lift. Like it was a lift going to work, and there's sometimes when you're just you and a person in the lift, there's like. Mm-hmm. Particularly in London, there's that awkward silence of no one says anything, and I always used to have this. My mind would be going, "Oh God, this feels awkward. I could feel this." And then what happens if someone broke wind, or how embarrassing that would be? And oh God, and this voice would just go reeling off. And I was in that, and I was like, "Okay, right, I'm going to push through this, and I'm just going to say something to them." And I looked at them, and I happened to really like their jacket, so I said, "Morning, I like your jacket." And I said, "Where did you get it from?" They said, Camden, I think. And I was like, thanks. And that's all we said. And it was like, ping, doors opened, and I walked out. And what I noticed was that the feeling of elation that I felt on the other side of pushing through. And all I said to someone was like their jacket, like that's it. So, but it was most importantly, there's a book, famous book by, I can't remember her name now, but it's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it's learning to feel it, notice it, and push through it is exactly, and you feel this momentary lift of like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I started playing around with things in the lift and doing like, oh, I'll compliment more people. And then what that did was I'd see those people in the pub later on because we were in a shared building, and we'd have a conversation because we'd broken the ice. I was like, oh, okay. And then I had some really nice, quick conversations with people in lifts and things like that. But that gave me the strength, the confidence, and it's like building your confidence, like the rings of a tree. You do little things, slowly but surely, you start to change your identity to be that person that says hello to someone in a lift as opposed to someone that doesn't.
I like the fact that you're even experiencing the next step from that as well. It's like, it's not just a hello in the lift. It's actually, we bumped into each other in the pub afterwards and the conversation's moved on. So you've talked slightly about the fact that you have experienced anxiety. Has the anxiety been a big obstacle in your life?
Actually, physically, has it blocked you and kind of sent you off on a different path? Or has it been something that's been sort of there alongside whatever it is you've been doing?
It's a mixture of both, really, because my anxiety tended to be big bouts of it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like it was general day-to-day anxiety.
Okay.
It was... so the last big one was in January 2019. Actually, that's not quite true, but I'll say the last big one was in January 2019, and I didn't sleep for about 3 weeks. I lost 7 kilos of weight, and I even turned a weird shade of grey. Like it was horrible. It was like my version of hell. But during that time, I was still working. I was away at doing a workshop. And I was performing not particularly well, I don't think, but my inside, I was all over the place. But I wasn't, I had this, like when people go to work, you have to be professional and do it. At the time, I didn't feel that I could say, listen, I'm having a really hard time mentally. I need to have some time off, or I just want to say that so it makes me feel a bit better. And so just please take that into account. And I think now since lockdown, it's much more acceptable to do that, but still not. A lot of people still wouldn't do it, but it's getting better for sure. So during that time, I was going, I wasn't saying I was feeling in authentically and honestly, but I was performing. But I'd go back to the hotel and do sit-ups and press-ups and everything to try and get the pain and the awful feeling of anxiety out of my body, so I could get a little bit of sleep, and I'd get like a couple of hours, then wake up, same thing again. And it was like over the course of a night, I would probably do like 200 or 300 press-ups in blocks of like sleeping for an hour, do that. And it was horrible, absolutely horrible. So, but that was then the one that was like, okay, now you really got to do something about this. And I was already done lots of starting on coaching and practices and things, learning about philosophy and various, but it was at that moment I was like, okay. And I started doing this really big experimental journey of how I can, start to manage my anxiety, and did things like yoga, going to yoga, cold showering. I was already kickboxing, but then doing ecstatic dance, 5 rhythms, lots of different practices. And then I got this real deep understanding of energy and Taoism and Buddhism and Zen, and how actually it's all very, very similar. It's understanding the flow of energy in the universe. And then I got really interested in quantum physics and all this stuff. And it's they all agree. Like, it's like, oh, and it's really simple. As I said at the beginning, seeing yourself as a wire and allowing energy to flow through you. But you start to identify as a vessel that energy wants to flow through. And our problems only arise when we don't allow the energy to flow.
What advice would you give somebody who feels like at this point in time is kind of being crippled by anxiety?
The advice I would give is Google holotropic breathwork, because holotropic breathwork is a way of breathing, a certain way of breathing, and it's held by a practitioner. And you raise the oxygen in your body, and it enables you to release trauma that has been stagnating in your body. And a lot of anxiety, and the way I phrase it to people is, if you imagine a hose pipe, and if it's directly in front of you, then the energy of life is wanting to flow through that. The hose pipe, in your body, and you've got the water wanting to flow through. That's life. And so if you think about the past too much, there's resistance in the hose pipe. So the water comes out and it's not quite so beautiful. If you think about the future too much, same thing. But if it's present, it comes out quite a beautiful arc. And if you've ever looked through water, that's where rainbows happen. That's how rainbows happen. So magic in that sense. But the point of that story is that the rest of the hose pipe going back is your history of your life. And so, and you imagine if a kink in a hose pipe, if you have a kink in a hose pipe, it makes a hissing noise, but also it slows down the flow of the water, right? So your life when you're suffering from anxiety isn't as vivacious or as beautiful as it could be because there's not as much energy flowing through you. But what happens when you have an anxiety attack is it's essentially momentarily the kink gets very quickly taken out and a burst of energy comes through and it feels overwhelming. And that's roughly what's happening when anxiety kicks in. But what holotropic breathwork does, and also coaching would enable you to do, is iron out those kinks. So you slowly take the kink out of the hose pipe so it doesn't overwhelm you, but then you feel more. The answer to anxiety isn't to feel less, it's to feel more. And that's the real key thing. And I know way back when, if someone said to me, no, you need to feel more of that. It's like, no way. That's like that's the worst thing you could possibly do. And I, at the time, I had a coach in my practice, and for a lot of my clients, the practice is to learn to lean into the thing that makes you feel the most uncomfortable. And that's what Plight Club's all about. Like the word vulnerable, which is on my top, is it's all about learning to rebel through your vulnerability and go into it as opposed to away from it. And when you do that, you start to iron out those kinks of the past. And we've got lots of them. Sometimes traumas that happen in the past for people are really, really big ones, and sometimes they're really, they can be a very small thing as well that's then been amplified over time. But it's learning that what I've just said is happening and starting to see yourself actually, right, okay, anxiety. Sometimes it can be a chemical imbalance, don't get me wrong. So the medication has its place. But I also think a hell of a lot of diagnosed anxiety in that sense could be dealt with through coaching and enabling person to understand how their body actually works, what's going on. Western medicine is getting better at it, but I think people go to the doctors. Doctors don't know necessarily what I've just spoken about. Not what some do, which are great, but it's very quick to diagnose a pill, and it's like when people go off, but the pills stop you feeling, in essence, and that's not. That's not what I can't say it's true for everyone. And I have to speak from my own point of view because that didn't work for me, but I did have some pills when I did, because there was a time where I was like, I just wanted it to stop, and I totally understand that. And so, but I think if you've been on medication for 10 years or, a long period of time, that's not necessarily the answer. Don't stop it. Just to be clear, don't immediately stop it. Talk to a professional of that sense, but there's probably something deeper going on there. But what I found when I had medication in my pocket was that it was like a comfort blanket. It was there in case I needed it.
Yeah.
And so I found that really useful. So to answer your question directly, the piece of advice would be certainly Google holotropic breathwork, find a coach to enable you get support in that way. And if you can just mention to someone and break the ice and just say, I'm feeling a bit shit. I'm feeling a bit anxious. Even if you don't have the language to describe what's exactly going on, just find anyone just to say how you feel to them. And that will lighten the load. We don't need to hold it all together because humans are such beautiful beings deep down that if someone reaches out to me and says, I'm feeling a bit rough or I'm feeling whatever, it's an absolute gift. I'm like, thank you for that, because it's an element of trust. They trust you enough to be able to be very vulnerable in front of you. And if there's nothing more beautiful, I don't know what is more beautiful than that.
This episode is kindly sponsored by Plight Club, a brand whose mission is to change the attitude towards vulnerability by encouraging more conversation around it in order to increase real human connection. When you can express your feelings constructively, you can work through your fears, open your heart and find your place in the world. The vehicle for these conversations is clothing, or connection clothing as it's become known. Connection is one of my core values, so I'm thrilled to be able to partner with Plight Club so we can join in our collective goal of bringing people together and helping you rebel against staying the same. Sustainable, organic and rebellious, of course, Plight Club also uses 50% of their profits to fund proactive suicide prevention in the form of coaching, support and awareness raising, which enables people to understand their emotions and express how they feel constructively. Become a vulnerable with us. For more info on the brand or to buy online, go to plightclub.co.uk or follow on Instagram at plightclubhq. Now, back to the show.
So I know that Plight Club is actually unisex clothing at this stage. I don't know whether you're planning on adding any more products, but I know it as predominantly as your t-shirts and sweatshirts and stuff. Do you find that the fact that it is unisex is a great way to help open up the conversations for guys, particularly?
For me, it's a constant debate in my mind for this. So the target market, like the central target market, is men, really, but it is unisex. So in this context, I want to enable men to understand how important it is to talk about your feelings, because at this point in time, men need more help than women. Yeah. Right. And because women are oppressed in many other ways, but they're not in society really. It's never said to a girl, it's like, big girls don't cry. It's in the same way big boys don't cry. It's like society. If you're saying that to your children or any child, please stop, because you're creating a prison for them. It's never say big boys or big people don't cry. It's the worst thing you can possibly do. Also, with that, just as a moment, if a child gets angry, it's not to say don't get angry is also the same thing particularly for a guy. In that instance, say it feels like you're experiencing anger. Would you like to have a shout about it, go for a run around, do punch a pillow, do something so that they can see that they can move it constructively and it's not a bad thing?
Yeah.
Because I personally, one of my things is having a fear of my anger was there. Sorry, right, back to the question. Okay. It's unisex because we need women to support men in that way of being, right? And so, and I like speaking from a heterosexual point of view, but this is true in any relationship. There's an energy in the world which is you, and I'm wondering whether to go down this route, because it's very it could be considered quite spiritual, the language I'm about to use, but the way that the Taoists talk about energy in the world is you have feminine energy in the world and you have masculine energy in the world. But that's yin and yang. Lots of people have seen the yin and yang symbol. The reason it's together is because we have that in every individual, right? And so it's nothing, masculine, feminine is nothing to do with gender. It's yin and yang. So in that context, but there's been a huge deficit of feminine energy, so the yin energy in the world, and that's the one that makes you feel chaotic. When it's in the negative sense, it's chaotic and overwhelming, and kind of that's where when our emotions kick off, and so it's been suppressed. And that's what the patriarchy is about, and it's been suppressed for years and years and years and years. And within us, we have when we start to rebel through our vulnerability, you start to stir up this emotion, or this type of energy, and it's kind of it's overwhelming. But what we're doing is we're breaking our container, which is our masculine side of thing, which houses the energy. So rather than being a fixed thing, because when it's fixed, what happens is you get a lot of tension and you boil over, like as the example with a hose pipe. But if you can change that so it becomes a bit more flexible, so you stretch your own boundaries, what it does is enable you to hold yourself in a moment of panic, let's say. But learning that, if that was a thing, hypothetically, you had a fear of being on stage, and that was then the trigger, and then you just completely froze, or that thing, and you just couldn't think. That's the bit that we're talking about. That's where anxiety would kick in. But what we need to do is learn to stretch our capacity to hold our own energy in a man, and so that then we can support our partners. Man, or if your partner's a man or a woman, doesn't make a difference in that context. But you can hold them, and you can create a sense of safety for whomever you're with, because you can share emotions, you can do other things, but no one boils over. So you can actually talk about difficulties in life more constructively, as opposed to pointing the finger or blaming other people or do all these things. And so that's why so men being at the core of it is because we need more help at this point in time. And then women, I would love women to wear the brand so that they can, so when men see women wearing the brand as well, it's like, well, sex sells as well. And it's, for straight guys, women motivate you incredibly, like in that context. And so if you can see someone that, this is actually a bigger point. If women can learn to say to guys, if a guy can't talk about his feelings, it's to be able to support a person in that situation, as opposed to shut them down or anything in that context. And a lot of women will in relationships put up with subpar behavior, essentially, because they have their own traumas going on and stuff that's difficult for them. So there is kind of like, any love is better than no love at all, which I get when you're in that situation. And I've suffered from anxiety, and I've been in relationships with that kind of mindset. But once you start to break out of it, you're like, oh God, yeah, I need to actually learn to say no to that, and say if the guy, as example, or the girl can't talk about their emotions, it's to say, yeah, I think you're wonderful, and I think there is something here, but until we can both openly talk about our emotions, we're not going to be able to actually converse properly. So if that's the case, come back when you can. I'd love to like in that, and that's very much paraphrasing the conversation. But then that would be a huge motivator to me, as an example. If a girl said that to me about 10 years ago, I'd have been like, what? 100%. I'd have been off. Like, how do I talk about my emotions? Cool, I need to do that because I want to be connected with women in that way. So having women encouraging men and creating a safe container for men to actually express how we feel. And that it can be quite scary for a woman to be around a man who's expressing himself. As we have emotions, and women have them too, but men particularly have, like, I have an emotion which I don't think there's necessarily a label for it, because it's not anger, but it's the thing that I want to break stuff. I want to destruct. I can't think of an emotion that is that. It's not, because it's not anger, it's something else. And I just want to destroy things. And obviously you can't do that in society. And I'm a human, I'm not an animal, but I still have that animalistic urge. So one of my favorite things is to go into a forest and just break sticks. I love it. It feels amazing, in that context. But it can be quite, when you're around an embodied man and he is releasing anger in a constructive way, the energy that it comes out is quite like, whoa, it can be quite overwhelming. But I'm not saying that they're directing it at the person. Like, if it's directed at the person, then you're in a different ballpark altogether. Mm-hmm. But I mean constructively. It can be quite overwhelming. So learning to sit in your own triggers when that happens is still where the coaching is all about. So that's why it's for both parties. It's quite a long answer, but hopefully they get the point.
Is that where the link between the coaching and the kickboxing that you've been doing comes from? Is it that kind of looking for a way to release emotions in a safe sort of constructive environment?
Yes, in essence, because the idea, I do a thing called a rage release ring. So the premise of it is I coach someone whilst we box, and I will get to know them a little bit, and hypothetically, I'm just going to use the phrase, your dad didn't give you much love, as an example. It could be anything. But when you say that to somebody and it genuinely hits on a trigger for them, so they get emotionally triggered. But if you physically trigger them at the same time, which is by punching them not hard, but lightly, their body's natural fight and flight will get kick in, but you'll also get the emotional fight and flight kick in at the same time. And it's amazing to watch a person get properly triggered. It's like hitting a tuning fork. It's like breaking the ice, and all this anger just goes bleh. It sounds and feels different to anger that's not pure, if that makes sense. Authentic anger to be around isn't scary. It's a weird, it's a relatively new thing. I haven't really got my head around that, but being around people that are expressing genuinely anger that's hurt them or they've been hurt in the past, and this is what the anger is, it's like, it's a really beautiful thing to be near. It's like someone giving you a gift at the same time, again, to see them in their vulnerability, because it's a person that is trying to do the work to get through so they are less angry. It's not that they are acting angrily. There's a very difference between the two things. So that is the coaching box sessions is because of that. And it's something that is, it works. When I first did it worked way better than I thought it was going to work. So I was like, oh, okay. And now I understand what's going on, and I hold space for people in that way. Yeah.
Because you've also done the Great Connection Festival. I just wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about that, because it's another way that you are sort of facilitating the conversations. Even by calling it the Great Connection Festival, you know, you're getting people to connect with each other. You're getting people to connect with their emotions and experience a series of different. Well, I mean, I would no. You talk about it. I don't want to. That
was a great that was a great bio of it as well. So thank you. So the Great Connection Festival, I did it because when lockdown started, as soon as Boris Johnson, I think, said we're going to be locked down, I was like, that is not good. That is not good for humans. And I was like, well, okay, how can I help? What can I do? And so the first thought was that, and I was like, okay, I'll put on a festival online, and then obviously it came into being called the Great Connection Festival. And the first time I did it, it went from nothing to, I sold 120 tickets, I think, and managed to get 2 sponsors in a month. And it was like, oh, okay, that was amazing. And then the second one got it built on it again. It got bigger and got a slightly bigger sponsor in that sense. And I sold 350 tickets, I think. But then the third one, we'd come out of lockdown. So people, and I totally understand, people didn't want to look at screens. Totally get it. So at the moment, it's slightly on pause. I want to do a physical one, but I don't. A bit like you, I've got lots of stuff going on, and I just can't play. There's so many. I can't spin all the plates.
Sure.
But it's a brand that's there, and I'm working with a charity, and possibly next year to do a Great Connection Festival tent inside another festival. If that makes sense. So that may do that. So yeah, and it's exactly that really. The point of the Great Connection Festival is, it's a wellbeing festival that isn't about the individual. Because I think with the wellbeing festivals that are about individuals, great. Like it's all about your well-being. And I think that's very important, how to look after yourself, how to maintain yourself in that way. But I feel for me, the things that make me feel the best, actually, that's something to say about my SAD syndrome. The number one way I got out of feeling that way was talking to someone else about me, but also doing an act of service for other people by, in essence, taking a spotlight off of me. There is a line in the book, the Taoist book, the Tao Te Ching. It's like something like problems only arise when you're thinking of the self. So when you think of other people, then you're not quite your problems don't matter quite so much. And so, putting self out there. So it's a space where people can come, connect with connect with themselves, understand a bit more about energies and that, and also connect with other people. That's if you go to a thing called the Great Connection Festival, you kind of can expect to meet some people. It would be a bit odd if you didn't.
I look forward to seeing that, develop into something physical, because it does feel like it could become an actual physical event or a tent or a space or something, not just on.
Yeah, I do want it to be, for sure. And straight after this call, I'm going to message the charity and reinvigorate that. Yeah.
Amazing. So are you working on any other projects at the moment, whether it's, to do with Plight Club or whether it's to do with your coaching or?
Yes, I'm writing a book, is the main project in the background.
This is quite the scoop.
Yeah, so I suppose this is the press.
Amazing.
First time it's been announced publicly, I suppose, in that context. Yes, I don't know what the title is yet, because I've got a few going around in my head. But the premise of it is I've had quite a journey with going from anxiety to abundance. So that's one title might be that, anxiety to abundance. And I feel that I have a way of translating a lot of information into a way that people can understand it. So it's that there's like a theory layer that goes through the book, but it's also a quest in a way. As you're reading, you'll get tools to create your own toolbox. So that at the end of it, you'll have this, because I've got a bank of tools that I have in the background. So if, and we're never not going to suffer from anxiety, it's a natural thing that's there, but it's learning how to deal and ride the waves. And so I think I start the book with, it's a bit like, because the waves of emotion will come up. So this book is a bit like wax on a surfboard, and it'll enable you to stay on better. That's what it's about. And so my journey, I've picked up little tools a bit, like the one of doing emotional training in a lift. It's not something that a psychologist might say to you, if you know what I mean, but that's something that I do understand the psychology of it, but it's through practical things that you can apply in your day to day. So like cold showering, as an example, a lot of people, Wim Hof is the most famous cold exposure person. And he does talk about this, I think, and it is really good for your health in general, for your physicality. But one of the main things it does for me is a bit like when you make your bed in the morning. If you make your bed in the morning, you've done something for yourself and you make it neat and it feels good. When you do a cold shower each morning, you feel the fear and do it anyway, immediately. And it starts your day in a different way. And you're telling yourself, I can do it. And I've only done 2 of these. I've just recently switched to doing cold, straight into cold, then hot, then cold. I used to do your face.
Exactly. Oh, I mean, I know you're telling me that it's good for you, and I'm fully like behind the feel the fear and do it anyway.
Come on, take the challenge. Come on.
Like it's the last thing I would feel like doing in the morning is a cold shower.
It was, and if I'm going to try and sell it to you and obviously sell it to the listeners in that context, because it's really powerful practice. I used to do it, as I said, have a hot normal shower and then flick it to cold at the end. Start there if you want to. That is a way in, and you get to a point now where I won't have a shower and not flick it to cold at the end. It's the best thing ever. For the reason being, because when you get out of the shower, there's no, oh God, it's chilly, because you're cold. Like you don't get that breeze, and it's the getting out of the shower is way more pleasant. But the way I go into this in the book, but the way I instilled that was that there's another book called The Chimp Paradox, which is all about training your mind. It's mind management. And so the way, if there's something that you don't want to do, you need to reward your chimp brain. So in the example of cold showering, I have a radiator, put my towel on the radiator, so it's a hot towel, right? So I then get out of a cold shower and I'm like, oh God, that wasn't pleasant. Get the whole hot towel and put it on my face. And it's just the best feeling in the world. It's just every morning, it makes me squeal. I do a little squeal every morning. It's so nice. And even if I then at later dates get I feel heat against my skin, it reminds me of that feeling and my body, and that's the way the mind body connection works. So doing that is the way to instill any habit, is to, if you want to change your behavior, you have to reward yourself at the same time. So if you're quitting smoking, as example, some people can just quit cold turkey and that's like fair play to them. But most people find it difficult. But if you're in the quitting smoking thing, put the money in a jar at the end of a week. I don't even know the price of cigarettes now, but 7 days, say it's 10 quid a pack. That's 70 quid. I think it's even more than that. So you could buy yourself something that's worth 70 quid. That's actually, and that's where you get reward. And then there's but with a cold one, going in cold initially, that thing of, it's such a rush. I've done it twice. As I said, I've only done it twice, but I'm building on it. But you go in and the energy that goes through your body is like, whoa, and you get be careful, I think, because there's an element of, I get really lightheaded, but it's a really beautiful feeling. But then when you put the hot on, the opposite happens and you get another rush because it's like warmth, and you do that. And then you put the cold on at the end and you go through the cycle. But it is a challenge, particularly today when it was like, it's ice cold outside. So it's not for the faint hearted, but it's definitely worth doing. And when you get a practice of that, it is amazing. So are you going to take the challenge? Are you going to have a cold shower tomorrow?
I ought to. I really feel like I ought to. I'm all about accepting challenges. So I'll let you know how that one goes.
Right. I'll hold you to it. You've set it out to the public now.
I know. I've told everyone I will. I will do it. So we've talked a lot about, your journey up until this point and what you're doing now. It might be nice just to ask you before we leave, what's your big vision for the future? Or perhaps there isn't a big vision. Perhaps you're just happy to kind of just go with the flow a little bit at the moment and see how things pan out.
I think the answer to that question is both. Actually, there's the Taoism and the Tao Te Ching is a huge central part of my life now. I don't pick labels. I don't really do definitions in that way for a reason of all words are limiting in that context. So I don't want to say I am this, because you're also saying I am not that. Mm-hmm. But if I was to pick one, Taoism is a central thing to my life, and I'd bring Buddhism and Zen and quantum physics, as I said, into it. But there's a line in that book that says, "A life shaped by circumstance." And I love that line because it's learning to roll with the punches. And like, I don't know what Plight Club is going to become. And I want to have an idea, but I don't want it to be fixed. Because one of the things I've thought about the other day is I've discussed with various partners in the past about children. And at the moment I'm kind of, maybe if the energy goes that way, I'm not closed to having them and I'm not closed to not having them in that context. I just don't know. But one thing that does really appeal to me is the thought of fostering. Like, I don't know why it does, but it kind of, my body goes, oh yeah. So who knows, like Plight Club could end up being like a foster house kind of thing. And it could be, and I don't know, but the money from the brand is going to pay for something. So it will be a brand of clothing. But where the money goes, I don't necessarily know yet. So the vision for Plight Club it's the rebellious bit of it. It's not about money anymore. The money doesn't provide safety. I believe the currency of the future is going to be, can you process your emotions? Because real safety and real unity and real love and bond and connection comes through your ability to hold yourself in the chaos that is, and the emotions that kick off. And when you can do that, people in your presence feel calmer. They feel near you. And so with my ex, it was the first time I ever had a relationship where both parties could talk about how they felt. Mm-hmm. And then one day she at dinner, she just said, I can't go back now. I said, what do you mean? Hang on. I was like, what do you mean by you can't go back? And she says, well, I can't, there's no way I can go back to a guy that can't talk about his emotions, because the depth of connection we have is beautiful. It's like, so I will, if a guy can't, it's like they have some work to do, basically. Mm. So the idea there is that there is an element of evolution with regards to, if enough people learn and go about how to process their emotions and how to work with emotions, then other people will learn really quickly, right? You know, it's going to, because the last thing this world needs, and this is what it says on Plight Club, is another them and us. There's enough of those. And that's not a good thing for the world. And so in this, it's like, if a person that can talk about their emotions, is their duty, I believe it's their duty to help other people that can't, to be able to do that. And there's a line in the Tao Te Ching again that says, what is a good man but a bad man's teacher? And what is a bad man but a good man's job? In that, you can put good and bad for anything. So if someone's good at talking about their emotions and they're bad at talking about their emotions, I was bad at talking about my emotions for the majority of my life. Like, you know, I'm 42, and I think I started talking about my emotions when I was 35. No, actually, that's not true. It was only in the last 3 or 4 years that I learned to properly speak and express myself, express who I am fully. And it takes a lot to do that. But so the big vision is imagine Nike, and how often you see. I remember I was on the tube the other day, and I think that the people opposite me, there was like, 6 or 7 people opposite me, and 4 or 5 out of the people were wearing Nike shoes, which is great, right? But if Nike represented love, compassion, I'm open to a conversation, what a different world would be in, like, in that context. So I'd love it if, you know, people representing Plight Club, it's a badge of honor, in essence, that I am doing. It's like saying, I'm not perfect, I'm human, but I'm making the effort, I'm trying. Like, that's it. Like, I'm doing my bit. If someone was wearing the Plight Club brand, I'd be like, I know they're open to a conversation. And it's like they're putting themselves out there. And I could just say, listen, man, I'm having a really hard time. Is it okay? I'm not expecting a conversation from you. I just wanted to say that out loud. So, and that person, you know, that they're willing to go, oh, I hear you, brother. Or I hear you, sister. And that's it. You don't have to have a full on, that's it. We're here for you. And so it's to create this global network of unity and love and bonding and connection that is through the power of clothing.
I think that's awesome. And I think it's an awesome way to close this. It's been a really beautiful conversation, actually. So where can people find you?
So Plight Club HQ on Instagram, mm-hmm. And plightclub.co.uk online. If you just Google Plight Club, that obviously all comes up. I'm trying to make it so that the online stuff becomes a vehicle to doing stuff offline, to bring people together, to connect in person. Because our connection here is great. Don't get me wrong; it's better than not, like, doing it without face to face. But you can't beat face to face connection. So yeah, that's how you can get in contact. For on there, there's also plightclub.co.uk/coaching, which is obviously all about coaching. And then if you Google my name as well for coming direct to me as a personal coach, which is adamslawson.com, that's the coaching in that sense as well.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And best of luck with Plight Club and coaching moving forward. I look forward to hearing more about your book.
Thank you. Yes, it will be out in 2023. It's going to happen.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Adam.
Thank you. See you later.
I hope you loved today's episode and it made you think differently, or perhaps nudged you into changing something in your life that's not working for you.
I'd love to give you a shout out right here on the podcast too. So let me know what you think, what you'd like to hear more of, or how you've been inspired by what you've heard. Let's keep in touch over on Instagram at Mischief and Hyde, or sign up to my newsletter at zoegreenhalgh.com. If you're enjoying being part of the Mischief movement, please consider telling a friend or leaving me a review wherever you download your episodes, which will seriously help my mission to inspire and empower more people like us to choose mischief over mediocre. Ciao!
Right, I'm going in. Let's see if this cold shower stuff is all it's cracked up to be.